What's going on, everyone? GoodMicWork Commentaries back at you with another PayPal donation video. This one comes courtesy of great friend and awesome supporter of the channel, Joey G. Joey has a very difficult last name to pronounce, so he told me I could just call him Joey G. I very much appreciate that, sir. And he donated several weeks back and requested that I do a review of Raw 1000. And I thought this was an interesting pick because I haven't done too many of these reviews from more modern times. I mean, this was 7 years ago, but in my mind, this still seems recent. And I don't think I've taken a look at this show since the night that it aired. This was the first time I've really gone back and looked at it and watched it on the WWE Network. And I remember during this time, I was on YouTube. My YouTube channel was very primitive back then. It was in its infancy. I even think the review that I did on the show back then was long since taken down by WWE. I think I used some footage or something like that. So it was nice to go back and take a look at the show with a fresh set of eyes and, you know, a 2019 Good Mic Work mind. And it was an interesting show, to say the least. And I appreciate this request, and I think it's going to be a lot more fun than you fans think. Some people don't really look back on this show with very much fondness. It wasn't a great show by any means, but it had a lot going on. And I will share with you my memories of this time and what I remember about some of these angles and these storylines and what I thought about a lot of these segments on Monday Night Raw. Some were really good and some were straight up ridiculous. Can you believe that it's been 7 years of 3-hour Raws, or almost 7 years? Because I believe this was the first night that Raw moved to 3 hours and stayed that way permanently. And Joey, you were even explaining to me in your email messages that this show is very significant to you personally as a wrestling fan. I think you said you began watching wrestling in 2002. I think you said the Royal Rumble 2002 was your first show. So I always thought that was kind of a late start for a wrestling fan, but not really. I mean, that was 17 years ago. You've been watching wrestling for 17 years already, and this was one of your favorite shows that you've ever seen. I think you also threw out a couple of other favorite shows like Unforgiven 2006, Vengeance 2011, and I think WrestleMania 24. So you've had a lot of shows that you've experienced that have been significant to you personally as a wrestling fan. And this show here, Raw 1000, is one of them. And I am more than happy to do this review for you. And it was actually kind of nice to go back and take a look at this episode that I have not laid eyes on in 7 years. But before we jump in to that, of course, if you are interested in donating or supporting the channel and you would like to have a video of your own done, you can do that over on Patreon or on PayPal. Any one-time donation of $100 or more, I'll do a video on any wrestling-related topic that you want. You can also support the channel just by watching this video, subscribing to my channel. We just recently surpassed 25,000 on the YouTube channel, so if you are watching this and you are not a subscriber, smash that subscribe button right now. Also, give that like button a people's elbow, and let's try to get Joey G at least up to 300 likes on this video. That would be sweet. This episode will also be downloadable over on my website, GoodMicWorkCommentaries.com. If you just want to listen to the podcast version, you can download it over there, or you can catch me on iTunes, Spotify, or Stitcher Radio. The links to all of this stuff that I talked about is in the description below, along with my social media. So make sure you head over to Twitter at GoodMicWork and give me a follow. Like the Facebook page. I may or may not be starting an Instagram page in the future for the channel. I have been thinking about it. Don't know if I really want to keep track of yet another social media site, but a lot of people have mentioned that it might be good for the channel, just extra, promotion and publicity and shit like that. So if you think Instagram is a good idea, let me know in the comments below. If you don't, also let me know in the comments below. But why don't we move on now to what we're going to get into tonight? Like I said, Raw 1000 is the show we're going to be reviewing here. Went down on July 23rd, 2012 from the Scott Trade Center in St. Louis, Missouri. And I remember staying home and watching this show. I know I was off from work. I remember sitting on my couch and watching it, and I remember being mildly excited for the show that they had put together here. Now, there was a shit ton of legends on the show. You're going to be amazed by some of the names I mention as we go through the results here. Many of you are probably more familiar with this show than me because I forgot nearly all of this stuff, and this is probably fresh in a lot of my listeners' minds. But for me, like I said, haven't really watched this since 2012, so it was an absolute trip to take a look at this. Now, the show opened up with a very fun video package. I forget the name of the song that they were using all night long, but really nice video package chronicling all the years and all the best moments in the history of Monday Night Raw. And once they opened up and the show began, we see Vince McMahon come out. No Chance in Hell plays. Vince Power walks down to the ring, thanks the fans for all of their years of support and touts some of the accomplishments of Monday Night Raw, and then introduces D-Generation X. So D-Generation X, Shawn Michaels and Triple H open up the show, and it was a really interesting night for Triple H. Some of this stuff is straight up absurd with what Triple H had going on, and I'll mention some of that in a minute. But Shawn and Triple H come out first. They do their little DX thing that they were doing around this time. Very underwhelming time in my mind in the life of D-Generation X by the time we got to 2012. I mean, Shawn was already a year out of the business, or 2 years retired by this point, and I just didn't really like the late 2000s rebirth of D-Generation X. To me, it was just not what it used to be, and I didn't like it. I didn't like the glow sticks. I didn't like the outfits. I didn't like the humor anymore. None of it was really funny, and Shawn and Triple H, they didn't say a whole lot. They kind of did a little bit of back and forth on the mic, and then Triple H says, "Didn't there used to be more of us?" And that's kind of when the audience popped, and I remember loving that, because you knew with all of the legends that WWE had announced and stacked on this show, we had to see some more D-Generation X members. So they brought out everybody else except for Chyna. Chyna was still alive around this time, but she was the sole DX member, aside from Rick Rude, who of course has passed away, that was not out there for this. And when Triple H said there used to be more of us, that's when the New Age Outlaws and X-Pac come rolling in on the Jeep. Not a tank, but a Jeep. Very reminiscent of when they invaded WCW Nitro back in 1998. And I know I've mentioned this before, but I was at that Raw when they did that. It was we were in Hampton, Virginia, and they went down to Norfolk at the Scope to fuck with WCW. So I was actually in the building for Raw that night when that went down. And a lot of people refer to that day as the day that DX invaded WCW with a tank, but it wasn't a tank. It was a Jeep with a big-ass gun on the back, and they rode out in the exact same thing for this. They got in the ring. They all did their DX shit. Kind of a funny moment there between Shawn Michaels and Billy Gunn when they kind of struggled to figure out who was going to do the "if you're not down with that, I've got 2 words for you" line, and they kind of go back and forth a little bit until they agree to do it together, and that's when Damian Sandow interrupts. And boy, when I saw him come out, I was like, oh man, yeah, how sad is that I've almost forgotten about this poor guy, because he was so damn entertaining. You know, the way he was used and utilized and released and completely fucked out of his career by WWE is one of the more frustrating things in recent history. But seeing him come out there was kind of a joy, because like I said, I almost forgot about the guy. And he was just out there showing how ridiculously entertaining he was, got in the ring, talked shit to DX. You knew what was going to happen. They eventually all just beat the shit out of him, and that was the end of the segment. So they tried to kick off Raw in a very fun, lighthearted, entertaining type of way. I don't know if they really succeeded in that. It's always great to see the DX guys together, especially all of them, because the Shawn and Triple H version of DX was a lot different than the Triple H-led group from a couple years after that. So when they're all in the ring together, just for a fan to see these legends, I'm always going to mark out for that. But the segment itself, I don't know. I just give it a meh. For the first match of the night, we actually get Jim Ross coming out to make a special appearance. He's going to call the match. They introduce him. He sits down with Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler, and he calls a 6-man match between Sheamus, Rey Mysterio, and Sin Cara, taking on Chris Jericho, Dolph Ziggler, and Alberto Del Rio. The babyfaces won that when Sheamus ended the match with a bro kick onto Jericho, scoring the 1-2-3. Kind of interesting to see this mix of guys in the ring together. Many of these guys aren't in WWE anymore. Jericho's not there. Del Rio's not there. I don't know where the hell Sin Cara is. Really not much to talk about in the match. It was an okay match, but nothing special. And like I said, the babyfaces won. We had a ton of promotion for Tout on the show. Remember Tout? I had completely forgotten about Tout. I never used it, never even understood what the hell it was. It was kind of like a video Twitter type of thing. But WWE was really laying it on thick with their partnership with Tout. Never really took off, but it seemed like it was all they were talking about on this Monday Night Raw. And in one of the more interesting parts of the show that I had completely forgotten about, they had Charlie Sheen as a guest on the show via Skype. He was at his house in LA or whatever, and joining Monday Night Raw, joining the commentary team, Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler from time to time to discuss shit about the show. I think he was plugging his new movie or TV show or something like that, so he had a reason to be on there, and he would show up several times throughout the night. So they introduce him after the six-man match, and it's funny how the Skype technology has really improved, because it was a really pixely, shitty-looking connection there when they were talking to him, but you could hear him okay. And he talked about how he thought he would fit in well with D-Generation X, and said that Sheamus looks like a guy who likes to party and they could get along as well, and he would be coming back later. So that was our first little check-in with Charlie Sheen. We go to the back now. We've got AJ Lee in the dressing room. AJ Lee, of course, is getting married on this show to Daniel Bryan. They were advertising this big wedding between the two leading up to the big Raw 1000. She's in the backstage area with Layla getting ready, and Layla asks her if she's sure she wants to do this, because on TV a lot of fans are questioning whether or not she actually loves Daniel Bryan or she's using him or whatever the hell they were doing back then. And AJ kind of takes offense to constantly being asked that question, and she opens the door. She opens the dressing room door for some reason to see Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Rowdy Roddy Piper, and R-Truth fucking around in the hallway, just running past him doing something crazy. And then we get the giant hand. The hand that Mae Young gave birth to I don't know how many years ago after she got knocked up by Mark Henry. He's all grown up now. You know, that was one thing that I didn't really have a problem with. I know a lot of people look back on that and it's silly and it's stupid. But then again, so was Mae Young giving birth to the fucking hand to begin with. And in many ways, I felt like it was WWE kind of making fun of themselves. They know how silly and stupid that was years ago. And the fact that they followed through with it with a grown-up hand years later to make a little cameo on Monday Night Raw, I had no problem with it. Did I think it was stupid? Yes, but I also found it a little bit funny, because I'm an Attitude Era guy, and I'll never forget Mae Young shitting out that slimy hand. My God. We get Brodus Clay coming out next, and he introduces Dude Love. So he comes out to the ring with the Funkettes or the Brodusettes or whatever the hell they were called, Naomi and Cameron. They do their little dance, calls out Dude Love. Mick Foley comes out there in full Dude Love attire, and Jack Swagger is going to be Brodus Clay's opponent for this match, and I think Brodus winds up beating him in about 20 seconds. It was the fastest match ever. Jack Swagger on TV during this time, he was right in the middle of a long losing streak, and it's kind of funny where we see Swagger today. He just had his first ever MMA match and he won, and he's been gone from WWE for a while now, and he's now trying to make a name for himself in MMA, and so far so good. Back 7 years ago, things weren't so good, and you were being jobbed out to Brodus Clay in 20 seconds in not one of my favorite matches on the show. We then cut to the back with Triple H and Trish Stratus. Now, Triple H, like I said, was already out in the beginning of the show with all of his DX buddies, and now he's backstage with Trish, and he's been advertised all night long to be going out to the ring later on to call out Brock Lesnar, because they had a big issue on television several weeks prior to this where Brock broke Triple H's arm, and now there's a SummerSlam challenge involved. So angry, serious Triple H is going to be out later, but right now he's still happy-go-lucky D-Generation X Triple H, and he's in the back with Trish, and she starts showing him some yoga moves, and I really like this because it was a play on what they did back in, I think, 2000 with Kurt Angle and Stephanie and that whole thing, and that was when Triple H is trying to show Trish Stratus a wrestling move backstage, and he has her bent over, and then Stephanie McMahon walks in. So this time they've got Triple H, being bent over Trish, and I thought for sure Stephanie was going to walk in again, but instead of Stephanie, it was all of D-Generation X, wondering what the hell Triple H is up to with Trish Stratus. So he kind of plays it off, they all look at him funny, and they all walk away. And I remember this so well. I remember we even talked about it during this time. A very awkward and weird, and to this day, I still don't know what the hell was going on here. Very weird moment between X-Pac and Trish Stratus at the end of the segment. When DX kind of walks away, X-Pac, almost in a shoot, almost in something that wasn't scripted or written, kind of hangs around and puts his arm around Trish, and she seems really weirded out by it and completely uncomfortable, and was kind of this awkward, weird interaction or exchange between the two, and I cannot figure out why WWE would even put that in the script to create that awkward moment. It certainly wasn't entertaining. It was just fucking weird. And to this day, I still don't understand what that was even about, but really funny moment between those two. Next up, it's time for the nuptials, the AJ Lee and Daniel Bryan wedding. And it's so funny to talk about Daniel Bryan and AJ because I keep wanting to say AJ Styles, because up until just recently on WWE TV, Daniel Bryan and AJ were in the middle of an issue. And here they are 7 years ago, also in the middle of an issue, just a different AJ this time, AJ Lee. And they set the wedding up for Raw 1000. They've got the ring all decked out. It was really funny and kind of a lazy move. They just took a set of the ring steps from the corner and just put it right in front of the ring apron, and that was going to be the staircase. I guess they didn't really have time to make a super nice wedding set because they had to tear this shit down during commercial break. So they get ready to come out there. Jerry the King Lawler is in the ring first, and he introduces the individual that will be performing the ceremony, none other than Slick. And I loved this. I remember when this happened, I always loved seeing Slick. I wish we would see more of Slick. Slick was one of my all-time favorites growing up. He was so fucking hilarious. He was just a favorite in general amongst my entire family. You know, my mom or dad and some of my friends didn't really watch a whole lot of wrestling, but they would see it sometimes if I was watching it, and everybody always adored Slick. And to see him come out there to jive Soul Bro was fucking awesome. And he gets in the ring and he says, I can't believe it, he says he's doing this for Yardbird. WWE is paying him in Yardbird. And I laughed so hard when Jerry Lawler, who by this point is back on the headset, and he says, he's doing all this for Yardbird? Just fucking funny. But Slick also did a really good job in this setting, because this is a guy that we haven't seen on TV very often, hasn't been in front of an audience or a crowd in God knows how long, and he's up there, you know, just rattling off these lines like it was nothing. Daniel Bryan comes out first, of course, and then AJ Lee comes out to the very traditional and cartoony wedding march, dun 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 dun, or whatever the fuck, and they get up there. Slick is doing his thing. They're about to exchange their vows. When proposed with the question by Slick, do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? He says, yes, I do, or whatever. And then Slick also asks AJ Lee the same question. Do you take this man to be your wedded husband, and blah, blah, blah. And she replies, yes, yes, yes. And just as Slick is about to pronounce them man and wife, she stops him and says, wait a minute, I wasn't saying yes to Daniel Bryan. I was saying yes to another man, a man who proposed to me earlier on in the day. And then Vince McMahon's music hit. And I remember this was kind of a swerve. One thing I do remember about this is I don't think anybody saw this coming. And Vince McMahon comes out there to announce that no, he's not having an affair with AJ Lee. He didn't propose marriage to her. He proposed a different type of offer to her. And he says he also wants to introduce the new general manager of Monday Night Raw. And he kind of points to the stage and then turns back around towards the ring and points to AJ Lee. And he says, AJ Lee is your new general manager of Monday Night Raw. Daniel Bryan stands there stunned, and AJ's music hits, and she does her little skipping thing around the ring and kind of looks and smiles at Daniel Bryan, and now she's in charge. And I remember a lot of fans were mostly okay with this. I think a lot of us were wondering how they were going to get out of the wedding. We knew the wedding probably wouldn't go down. These two would not leave the ring, quote unquote, married. Even if it was storyline married, none of us really thought the wedding was going to actually happen. And of all the different ideas and scenarios that we were coming up with as fans of how they could get out of this situation, I don't think any of us saw this coming, where Vince McMahon would announce that AJ Lee, of all people, is the new general manager of Raw. Now, this was such a long segment because there was so many different layers here. Once AJ Lee leaves the ring, they go to commercial. They come back from commercial, and Daniel Bryan is still freaking out because when AJ Lee was leaving, he started destroying the set, breaking shit, throwing the flowers around, kicking stuff, breaking anything he can get his hands on. We come back from commercial, he's still losing his mind, and that's when CM Punk comes down to the ring. And of course, CM Punk was WWE champion during this time. He had a match with Daniel Bryan, I believe at Money in the Bank, just a few weeks prior to this. And he comes out to basically just rub salt in the wound. CM Punk, incidentally, has a title match in the main event against John Cena, who's cashing in his Money in the Bank contract. So CM Punk has got a big night, and he chose to come out there and fuck with Daniel Bryan, makes fun of him some more, and that's when Daniel Bryan starts barking back and getting mad, and looks right in CM Punk's face and says, I am the greatest of all time. And just to see CM Punk mouth the words, he goes, of all time, he couldn't believe what Daniel Bryan was saying. But the minute the words all time came out of Daniel Bryan's mouth, out comes The Rock. We hear the music. Rock comes out to a huge pop. He looks amazing, ridiculous shape. And we knew we were going to see The Rock tonight because he was another guy that was announced, another legend that was announced for the show. And he had a big announcement concerning the WWE title and the Royal Rumble. So we knew we were going to see The Rock, but he comes out during this nonsense. He arrives to an enormous pop, completely trashes Daniel Bryan. I think at one point he even said that he looks like a lumberjack banged an Oompa Loompa, which got a huge pop from the fans. And he also let everybody know that at the Royal Rumble, he was informed that he will get a title shot against whoever the WWE champion is at that time. And the WWE champion just happened to be standing in the ring with The Rock right there as well. And CM Punk had a little bit of an interaction with The Rock that I really enjoyed. I always admired and I respected CM Punk's ability to not sweat the big stuff. You know, CM Punk always felt very comfortable. He never seemed intimidated in the presence of somebody like The Rock. He was WWE champion and he believed that he was worthy of that title and he didn't have to take a backseat to anybody, including The Rock. And I think admired the attitude that CM Punk had back then. And he put it pretty bluntly right in The Rock's face that he would be facing him at the Royal Rumble and he's going to beat him at the Royal Rumble. And then Daniel Bryan gets all mad and he says, no, you're not. You're going to be facing me at the Royal Rumble because somehow between now and then, I'm going to become WWE champion. And that's when Daniel Bryan eats a rock bottom. So his night just keeps getting better. And Rock does the if you smell thing and the music hits and The Rock leaves and CM Punk just stands there amused, watched Daniel Bryan get his ass kicked, had a really good interaction with The Rock on the mic where the two of them remained confident and vowed that they would beat the other, but still some respect remained, especially on The Rock's side when he wished him well against John Cena and said, go out there and kick ass like I know you will. And it was all in all a really fun segment. I don't know how long the whole entire thing lasted from beginning to end, from the beginning of that wedding all the way to The Rock leaving. I mean, it felt like it had to be at least 30 minutes. It was a long time. So we would then cool off after that with my guy, Bret the Hitman Hart. Think of the legends we are talking about here that are on this show. My God, that backstage area during catering must have been so much fun. I would have paid any amount of money to sit back there and just admire the sea of legends and talents that laid before me backstage at Raw that night. My God. But Bret Hart comes out to announce an Intercontinental title match between champion Christian and challenger The Miz. Bret Hart does the ring announcing for this match and touts his history and legacy with the Intercontinental title and even name drops Mr. Perfect and the great match they had. And I gotta be honest, this is not one of my favorite moments for the Intercontinental title. Now, on one hand, when you look at where The Miz is currently in 2019, this is a significant night for him. This was the first night that he captured the Intercontinental title. I believe he had been U.S. champion by this point, but not IC. And he beat Christian. Now, here's my problem with him beating Christian. I don't care that The Miz won. What I care about is this match went about 3 minutes and 45 seconds. I mean, it was short. I don't know what was going on back then, why this match was so short. It might have been because the wedding went so long. They had to shave some minutes off. Or maybe Christian was hurt. I really don't know. Maybe he was hurt and he had to drop the belt and that's why the match was short. So I could be wrong on why it was so short, but I didn't really appreciate the Intercontinental title being switched clean in a match that went like 4 minutes long. It was just kind of weird. But The Miz, of course, did win his first Intercontinental title and he would go on to win, 7 more? Charlie Sheen is back after the Intercontinental title match. Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler hit him up again. And this time around, he starts talking shit about Daniel Bryan. And I remember in the dirt sheets around that time, WWE was playing with the idea of getting Charlie Sheen in the ring because he was kind of fresh off all of his craziness. And when he was really, big and all the things that he was doing and acting nuts and everything, WWE was trying to capitalize on that publicity. And they thought they could probably get him in the ring. And it looked like, I don't remember the news reports now. It's been 7 years, but it looked like that's definitely what they were trying to put together, was to have Charlie Sheen take on Daniel Bryan at SummerSlam that year. And Charlie Sheen spent his entire segment this time around just talking shit about Daniel Bryan, which was pretty funny. And next up, we do get Triple H coming back out to the ring again. Now, they introduce him as the COO, and the COO was out there in a ponytail and camouflage pants. It's no more fun and games with DX. He's Mr. Serious Man now, despite his ridiculous outfit. He calls out Brock Lesnar, but gets Paul Heyman instead. And get a load of how young Paul E. looks in 2012. Holy shit. 2012 to me was not that long ago, but I guess 7 years, it makes a big difference. But Paul still looked quite youthful back in these days. And he starts talking to Triple H and, my client this and my client that. Eventually brings up Triple H's kids, which Triple H immediately warns him, do not bring up my family. I don't give a shit what else you say. Just do not talk about them. And then Heyman keeps on and then does it again and basically insults Triple H's children. And right when Triple H is about to wring his neck, we get Stephanie McMahon coming out. And if I don't hate her current 2019 theme music, I hated 2012 worse. Straight up vomit inducing, but she comes out there, power walk into the ring. And one of the things I got a kick out of right off the bat is when she's talking to Paul Heyman and cutting a promo on him, she says that he cannot measure up to her father. And when it comes to her father, he's just looking in the rearview mirror. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? I think she got that screwed up because when she said that, if Paul Heyman is the one looking in the rearview mirror, that means Vince is behind him. So Stephanie fucked up that quote, which I thought was funny. She would eventually bitch slap Paul Heyman, one of many slaps that we would see Stephanie deliver year after endless fucking year. Winds up slapping the shit out of Heyman so hard that he angrily agrees to the match. He goes, fine, you want my client at SummerSlam? You've got it. That's when Brock Lesnar comes down to the ring. Triple H gets Stephanie out of there. The two of them have a short brawl. Triple H eventually runs Brock off, clotheslines him over the top rope, and Brock Lesnar retreats. And the match is set for SummerSlam, Triple H versus Brock Lesnar. And this was just a few months after Brock Lesnar came back. This was so early in his return. He came back the night after WrestleMania, and this was what? 3 months, 4 months later, something like that. So still a very new and exciting idea back then. Brock Lesnar being back in the company, I thought was huge. And this would also be very close to the end of Triple H's ponytail, because I believe at SummerSlam, he tapped out to Brock Lesnar. I'm pretty sure that was the main event, and come back, with the crew cut, and he would take on Brock, of course, at WrestleMania the following year, and get his win back in one of my least favorite Brock Lesnar WrestleMania matches of all time. We've got more legends up next, and I mean a shit ton of legends. We get Heath Slater coming out to the ring, and I guess he's been doing the deal on TV in recent weeks where he's been having matches with WWE legends. He's taken on guys like Psycho Sid and Vader and DDP and a few others, and now he's out there again to call out any legend that's in the back. And he gets that challenge answered by Lita. Now, Lita comes out there looking smoking, stupid, fall out of your chair, hot. My God. And she gets on the mic and says that she's brought some protection with her and introduces the APA. So Bradshaw and Farouk come out there to a huge pop. Heath Slater's like, fuck this, and he jumps out of the ring and tries to leave, goes up the ramp, and he's greeted by all of the legends that he had had interactions with previously on TV leading up to this. I saw Road Warrior Animal out there, Sergeant Slaughter, Psycho Sid, Vader, Rowdy Piper, Diamond Dallas Page, Bob Backlund, Doink. There might have even been somebody else, and of course the APA and Lita are in the ring. He eats a clothesline from hell from Bradshaw, and then Slater takes a moonsault from Lita. It's a mess. The poor guy just gets his ass handed to him by all of these legends, and it was a fun kind of segment, just a good-hearted, kind of like the DX segment, just something to bring the fans together, give the fans something to laugh at and appreciate and see a whole bunch of legends in one place at one time. And for me, the old school fan in me is never going to be upset about seeing Sid and Vader and Piper and DDP all in the same ring. It was pretty cool. We then go backstage to a Daniel Bryan interview, and he's being told about what Charlie Sheen said about him, and then he starts barking back at Charlie Sheen and calls him an asshole or whatever the fuck. So they're still really trying to promote this Charlie Sheen and Daniel Bryan issue. We get Kane coming down to the ring next. Kane comes out, his music hits, he gets in the ring, and he's just about to do his pyro spot when he's interrupted by a whole group of fucking misfits. We get Jinder Mahal coming out there. Look at how skinny Jinder Mahal looked back then. Oh my God. Speaking of skinny, look how skinny Drew McIntyre looks. Who's with him? We also have Kurt Hawkins there, Hunico, Camacho, and Tyler Rex. I don't even remember Tyler Rex. Who the fuck is Tyler Rex? But they all come out there to surround the ring and to attack Kane. And you had a feeling, this was going to happen. I remember watching this night when Kane is outnumbered. Well, you're like, shit, everybody else and their mother is at Raw 1000. Why wouldn't The Undertaker be there? I think the only guy missing from this whole night was Stone Cold Steve Austin. I don't know what the hell he was doing and why he wasn't a part of the show. But The Undertaker comes out, of course, to help Kane. Undertaker had not yet suffered that WrestleMania defeat to Brock Lesnar. That wouldn't come for a couple of more years. He was still in relatively decent shape for his age. He still looked pretty good. He was right off of the heels of that great Hell in the Cell match with Triple H at WrestleMania, and that thing was, one of the greatest matches in WrestleMania history. So he was still relatively on the top of his game around this time. And of course, the Brothers of Destruction do their thing. Everybody eats choke slams, and the two brothers completely annihilate this group of jobbers. And it's pretty interesting to see Drew McIntyre out there as one of these guys, considering that I think he's on the cusp of becoming a huge star in the business. Not that he's not already, but I mean a huge star, major player, world champion type of guy in WWE, hopefully in the year 2019. But back here in 2012, he was horrifically underutilized, and the best thing that ever happened to him was to leave WWE. We then get Charlie Sheen one more time, and this is basically where the challenge happens. Sheen is now informed of what Daniel Bryan said about him earlier on, and Charlie Sheen says, well, if Daniel Bryan wants to fight me, I'm not hard to find. Next time Daniel Bryan's out in L.A., he's more than welcome to come look me up, and we'll have it out or whatever. And that's when Lawler was like, did you just challenge Daniel Bryan? Because SummerSlam is going to be in L.A., and they were setting up for that whole thing. So you wrestling historians of modern times, you guys have to fill me in. What was the story on this? Why did we never get the match? I'm glad that we didn't. Charlie Sheen did not need to be in the ring wrestling at all. I would have no interest in seeing that. I'm glad the match didn't happen. If I remember right, Bryan faced Kane at SummerSlam that year, I think. So you guys are going to have to fill me in as to why the Charlie Sheen and Daniel Bryan thing never progressed beyond this night. And that now leaves us with the main event. WWE title on the line. John Cena, who won the Money in the Bank briefcase at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. This was back when they were doing two briefcases, I think, which I did not like, because I know Dolph was running around with a briefcase too that he would cash in the following year, the night after WrestleMania 29. I guess what it was is that each title had its own Money in the Bank, which is kind of weird when the titles are on both shows. I'm surprised they did it that way. It almost doesn't sound right, but that's the way it was done. So Cena, I guess, had to challenge for the WWE title, and Ziggler had to challenge for the World Heavyweight title. So Cena, in a very rare move, hasn't been done too many times, with the briefcase, he announces when he's going to cash it in. He's cashing it in on Raw 1000, about a year after his great match with CM Punk at Money in the Bank and the pipe bomb and that whole deal. They're in the ring together now as baby faces in the main event with the title on the line. And John Cena and Punk have a pretty decent match. Punk and Cena, I enjoyed a lot of their matches. I believe that Money in the Bank match was one of the very few 5-star match ratings that Meltzer ever gave to a WWE match. So the two of those guys knew how to work with each other. I thought this match was pretty decent, but looking back, I remember at the time thinking that CM Punk was going to remain champion. I didn't think that John Cena would take the belt from him on this show. And a lot of us were smelling the John Cena and Rock rematch. We were smelling it this night when The Rock announced that he's going to have a title match at the Royal Rumble. It was like, well, shit, Rock's probably going to win the belt, and then Cena will get his win back and win the belt at WrestleMania 29, which is exactly what happened, and it was so goddamn predictable, it made us all puke. So I personally wasn't too terribly worried about Punk dropping the belt here, but I was curious how they were going to get out of the match, and how they did it was just have the Big Show interfere. John Cena's got the STF on CM Punk. He's about to tap out. Big Show interferes, starts beating the shit out of John Cena. CM Punk kind of does nothing during the beatdown as Big Show's working over Cena. So The Rock comes out to pretty much save John Cena. Rock starts kicking the shit out of the Big Show, hits him with the spine buster, and gets ready to set up the People's Elbow. And then as soon as he bounces off the ropes to hit the elbow, CM Punk dives underneath the bottom rope, jumps up, and clotheslines The Rock perfectly right in mid People's Elbow onto the Big Show, and essentially turns heel. It was very reminiscent, sort of when Shawn Michaels kicked The Rock during the People's Elbow and during that first ever SmackDown show with the title match against Triple H. Kind of reminiscent of that. Perfectly timed by The Rock and Punk. Punk just slithered right in that bottom rope and just nailed The Rock out of nowhere with the clothesline, and then picked him up and nailed him with the GTS. And The Rock is just sitting there squirming, struggling, selling his ass off on the mat as CM Punk kind of stands there looking at his title, and the show goes off the air. And that was a nice swerve. I mean, there was two pretty decent swerves during this show. You know, we had AJ Lee becoming the Raw general manager, which came out of nowhere. And now we've got CM Punk turning heel after a long babyface run here as champion, turning heel in the middle of his title reign, which is another thing that's kind of rare. You know, we haven't seen that happen too many times where, you know, guys turn during their world title runs. Macho Man did it too. Macho Man and Punk, and there might be somebody else. You guys got to help me out. But those are the two big ones that I can think of that turned bad, you know, right in the middle of a long world title reign. So all in all, I thought this was an okay show. You know, looking back on it 7 years later, like I said, I haven't laid eyes on this show since 2012. So to look at it now, it definitely is no worse than anything we see currently. It definitely kept my attention. There was enough segments during the show to where there was always something to look at. Even the throwaway segments still had a shitload of legends and stuff. You know, even that Heath Slater segment that was designed just to be silly still gave us an opportunity to see guys like Sid and Vader and Sarge and Doink and DDP and stuff, and all that was fun. So overall, I think this was a fun night of wrestling. It was an okay show, not a great show, not one of my favorite Raws ever, but for the 1000th Raw, I thought WWE did a sufficient job of giving the fans significant stuff to watch. It was heavily loaded with legends and names from the past, but at the same time, we also had a WWE title match in the main event, which is what you want to have. That's what pay-per-views have. We had an Intercontinental title change. We had a wedding. There's only been a few weddings. Savage and Liz, Kane and Lita, Stephanie and Triple H, Billy and Chuck. You know, there's not been very many weddings in wrestling history, so this 1000th Raw I thought was loaded up with some pretty sufficient matches and segments for the time, in my personal opinion. If I was grading this show, I don't know, if I'm giving it a letter grade, I'm going to go C+ on this one. And that's probably the best I can do. So feel free to share with me all of your memories of this show in the comments below. What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? What the hell was going on with Charlie Sheen back then? And why did he not challenge Daniel Bryan at SummerSlam? What do you remember about a lot of these angles and storylines that were going on at the time? Be really interested to hear your thoughts, so hit me with them down below. I appreciate you guys sitting through and hanging out and listening to this. It's always fun to take a trip down memory lane, no matter how recent that memory lane is. I want to thank Joey G one more time for your awesome donation and your contribution and support of this channel. It means a lot to me. I appreciate it, and thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. You guys be good and have a great rest of your day. Keep an eye out on the channel. You should have another video coming up here in just a day or two, so it won't be long. I'll talk to you all real soon. Until next time, peace.
This has been a Good Mike Work Commentaries production. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/GoodMicWork. Follow Greg Morgan on Twitter at GoodMicWork and visit GoodMicWorkCommentaries.com for all the latest podcast and video content.